Here we go again. Clearly, they don't offer business and economics courses at Woke U. I know they offer plenty of courses on entitlement. They teach aspiring students how to collect woke welfare, how to demand money that you haven't earned. Woke U is actually doing a disservice to their students by not teaching them basic economics. Graduates enter the real world and they're immediately hit with a rude awakening. They experience massive levels of disappointment. I thought I was entitled to millions of dollars every year. I'm not even making $1,000,000 pesos. In a capitalist system, the amount of money you earn is not based on the number of hours you work. It's not based on skin color. It's not based on which gender you choose to identify with that day. You're not paid based on nepotism, mythical racism, or any of the other isms. In a capitalist system, you're paid based on your value. The more value you provide, the more money you earn. Very simple concept, but for some reason, the dump divers in the WNBA, they just can't seem to get an understanding of this. So once again, Professor KC will provide a free course on how value-based compensation works. Last week, Kelsey Plum was a guest on something called the Residency Pod, which is hosted by Mandalay Bay Casino in Las Vegas. KC, who in the hell is Kelsey Plum? You guys have never heard of Kelsey Plum? Really? I mean, she's legendary. She's one of the best dump divers in the history of pretend basketball. Kelsey has a nose for finding fresh plums in miles of buried trash. She can find plums like my dog can find a fresh turd to piss on. I could be walking my dog and she will sprint 50, 100 yards to piss on a fresh turd. Same thing with Kelsey Plum. She can be in a deep sleep. The garbage truck offloads a fresh pile of trash. Kel springs into action to find the one plum buried beneath the sticky Star Trek porn magazines. While on the Residency Pod, Kelsey Plum wanted to clear up these so-called misconceptions as it pertains to compensation demands from her fellow dump divers. There is this misconception that I want to be paid the same as LeBron James. This simply is not true. I feel we're entitled to the same percentage of revenue as NBA players. There's a huge difference, you peasant. Oh. Why, thank you, oh wise one. This entire time, my feeble mind has been so confused. I'm so glad the Plum Pillager was able to properly explain this to me. Listen to Kelsey Plum explain her demands. Then I'm going to show you how. She has absolutely no idea what she's talking about. Roll the film.
We are not asking you to get paid what the men get paid. We're asking you to get paid the same percentage of revenue shared.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm
saying?
Got
it. So that's a huge misconception.
That's a huge misconception.
Got it. Okay,
sure. Yeah, because every video is like, oh, this person gets paid this person gets paid that, right?
So I want to be really clear about that. Like, I don't think I should get paid the same as LeBron.
Right.
But the percentage of revenue, like, for example, they sell my jersey in Mandalay Bay, I don't get a dime.
You don't get any money from jersey sales?
That's crazy.
In the NBA, they have percentages of revenue shared for the players, right? So jersey sales, obviously their TV contracts. You see these every year, these contracts get bigger and bigger and bigger, right?
Yeah.
Massive.
But that's because their CBA, it negotiates where if the owners are making certain types of money, they get that as well.
Got it.
In the WNBA, that's not the case.
Okay, number one, there's never been a misconception here. WNBA dump divers have never been mistaken for intelligence, but even they're not dumb enough to demand NBA level salaries. I'd be willing to bet one game of the NBA Finals generates more revenue than the entire WNBA regular season. There has never been any confusion here. For the last several years, WNBA players had demanded more money, equal revenue sharing. They haven't been demanding NBA money, even though NBA money is the only thing keeping this dump afloat. Let me try to explain revenue sharing real quick without boring you guys to death. In the NBA, the league splits revenue 50-50 with the players. If the NBA generates $1 billion, half that money goes to the players, whether it's in the form of salaries, bonuses, whatever the fuck. Kelsey Plum pushing for the same thing in the WNBA, which is incredibly short-sighted when you think about it. since the WNBA doesn't generate any profit. If the WNBA were to split profits with the players, they would be sending them an invoice every 2 weeks instead of a paycheck. The way it works in the WNBA, it's a system called incremental revenue sharing. Before this system was put into place with the CBA signed in 2020, the WNBA had an 80-20 split. 80% of revenue went to the league, 20% to the players. Now, the league was forced to opt out of this agreement. Why? They couldn't afford to give the players 20% of their revenues. So why in the fuck would Kelsey Plum think that just 2 years later, it's realistic to demand 50%? The way incremental revenue sharing works, the WNBA will set growth targets. If growth targets are met, players earn the right to a portion of the revenue that exceeded the target. Now, for example, let's say the WNBA set a target for $60 million in revenue. We'll set it that number because that's about what they earn. If the league generated $70 million, the players would be entitled to a portion of $10 million. Problem is, the league ain't hitting growth targets. Now, that's pure speculation on my part, but I would imagine if they were growing and sharing revenue, players would not be complaining about it. This is another example of a WNBA dunk diver demanding to be compensated for money that she hadn't earned. There is just no way to please the dunk divers. 3 years ago, they were demanding higher salaries. They weren't offering any justification as to why they should be paid more. They played on the sympathy factor. We're being underpaid because we're women, or at least some of us are women. This is not fair. Dump owners, along with the lead dumpster, conceded to their demands. They began flying players commercially to games instead of making them hitchhike or take a Greyhound bus. They upgraded amenities. They provided plumbing in the dump so players no longer had to pretend to be cats and cover up their waste. Owners, they only wanted them focused on pretending to be basketball players. They also raised salaries. Average WNBA salary went from $71,000 to over $100,000 a year. I think that actually made Bob Griner the highest paid player in the league. At least for a little while. Now Bob is the highest paid prisoner in Russia. But as is the case with all recipients of woke welfare, they keep wanting more. Normal people would view incremental revenue sharing. They would view it as a challenge. For example, your company gives you a set of sales goals. Most people will bust their ass to try and meet them. They'll do everything in their power to exceed their goals so they can make more money. That's not how the brain of a dunk diver works. WNBA players, they don't feel it's their responsibility to grow the league. It's not their fault the league is a huge embarrassing failure. It's not their fault there are more rats in attendance than people and non-binary birthing persons. It's not their responsibility to make the product entertaining, more attractive to viewers. No! The reason the WNBA is a failure is because the front office doesn't make it more accessible to fans. Yeah, it's a logistical and marketing problem. Not enough people know how entertaining these dunk divers can be. I mean, have you ever witnessed overtime in the WNBA where the winner is decided in a facial hair counting contest? It's captivating television. Just last season, there was a classic moment in overtime where Natasha Cloud snuck in a razor, swiped one of the Sue Bird's wings, knocking off a handful of feathers. The Washington Woke, they ended up winning that contest by one facial hair. This is the kind of content millions of Americans are begging to see. They just don't have access to it, according to Kelsey Plum. Watch for yourself.
The league, what would you like to see the league itself do to keep that energy up?
I would like to see the league make it easier and more accessible for fans. For me personally, it's so interesting, when people are like tuned in, where can I watch the game? And I'm like, well, you got to download this app and then you got to put this in and it's blacked out. So you got to go to this place. And I would just like cable. I would like it to see easier and more accessible to fans. We understand that the product is great. And when we get people to watch the game, they love it. But the hardest part is getting people there. And so I think there are better ways strategically to figure out how to draw fans in, and then we can keep them.
And I mean, also that goes for even just apparel as well. I feel like we shouldn't go into an airport where a WNBA team is and you don't see any WNBA gear. There's people plenty of times tweeting at us, and they're like, oh, we're in Vegas, where can I get some Aces gear? And it's like, well, they only open the store on game days. And it's like, it shouldn't be like that.
Okay. So this is complete bullshit. This past season, we were given more nationally televised footage from the dump than any season before. Yet for some reason, you guys didn't watch. WNBA averaged 379,000 viewers a game. Anything else on television drawing that number would be canceled, unless, of course, you're Bomani Jones. The Bobo averages 379 viewers. He's given a multi-million-dollar contract extension. Kelsey Plum, she complains that games not broadcast nationally are broadcast on streaming apps. Now, you know what other league does this? The NBA. I pay $20 every month for Bally Sports. Millions of other people across the country doing the same thing. This is 2022. People have the ability to find a streaming service if they want to watch you. This is not an accessibility problem. It's an inability problem. Your product is not captivating enough for people to find your games. Kelsey Plum claimed, our product is great. When people can actually find games, they love it. They clamor for more. Are you out of your fucking mind? If this statement were true, you would not be complaining about accessibility. You know who complains about accessibility? People who can't draw an audience. If people care, they will find you. Yellowstone is the most popular show on television right now. It's not broadcast on NBC, Fox, A&E, MTV. Yellowstone airs on the Paramount Network, a channel most people didn't know existed until Yellowstone came out. If your product is good, it doesn't matter if it's airing on shitfuck TV. If the product's good, people will find it. The WNBA has received more exposure over the last 2 years than any other point in league history. Most people didn't know the WNBA still existed until 2 or 3 years ago. That other dump diver that was sitting beside Kelsey Plum, she complained, you don't see our gear in stores or in airports. This doesn't make sense to me. Well, it makes perfect sense to me. You see, clothing stores are in the business of selling clothes. If people demanded WNBA gear, clothing stores would stock it. The reason your gear's not in stores, no one wants it. I have been to hundreds of sporting events. Not one time have I ever seen someone wearing a WNBA jersey. Not once. The biggest problem in the WNBA, it's not television ratings. It's not lack of exposure. It's not mythical misogyny. The biggest problem in this league is the mentality of the players, the sense of entitlement, the refusal to acknowledge you are the reason your league is a failure. But give me your thoughts. Kelsey Plum demands equal revenue sharing in the WNBA. Do dump divers deserve a 50-50 split in revenue? I say give it to them. That way in 2 or 3 years, this league will be out of business. But what do you think? Sound off in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys tomorrow.